9/11, 10 Unforgettable Moments, the unthinkable tragedy that changed the world. On September 11, 2001, an unthinkable tragedy unfolded that would forever change the world. Terrorist attacks on two of America's most iconic buildings, the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., shook the nation to its core and left many asking how such a devastating event could have happened. Join us now for this Liber-Tea episode on what might be one of the most well-known tragic events in our world's history, the hijackings. The hijackings of 4 commercial airplanes on September 11, 2001, 19 terrorists from the Islamist extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial airplanes, targeting major landmarks in the United States. The attacks resulted in the deaths of nearly 3,000 people and caused significant damage to the World Trade Center buildings in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. The 4th hijacked plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was intended to target another location in Washington, D.C., but crashed into a field in Pennsylvania after passengers attempted to take control of the aircraft from the hijackers. The 9/11 attacks were a turning point in American history, leading to major changes in national security policies and the launch of the War on Terror. The World Trade Center attack. 2 of the hijacked planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, causing both towers to collapse and resulting in the deaths of nearly 3,000 people. The collapse of the Twin Towers was a moment that will never be forgotten. The sight of the buildings crumbling down, one after the other, was horrifying and heart-wrenching. Plumes of smoke that billowed from the ruins could be seen for miles, and the debris scattered across the city was a constant reminder of the tragedy that had taken place. Rescue efforts were extensive, with thousands of first responders working tirelessly to search for survivors and recover the remains of those who had perished. The Pentagon attack. A 3rd hijacked plane, American Airlines Flight 77, crashed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, killing 125 military personnel and civilians, along with all 64 people on board the aircraft. The Pentagon attack on September 11, 2001 was a devastating event that occurred when American Airlines Flight 77, a 3rd hijacked plane, crashed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The impact of the crash caused significant damage to the Pentagon, which is the headquarters of the United States Department of Defense. The attack left a gaping hole in the building, and the ensuing fire caused further destruction. The Pentagon attack was a stark reminder of the heinous acts committed by the terrorists on that fateful day. United Flight 93. The 4th hijacked plane, United Flight 93, crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers attempted to regain control from the terrorists. The passengers on United Flight 93, knowing that their plane was also hijacked and intended for another attack, bravely fought back against the terrorists. They managed to storm the cockpit and disrupt the hijackers' plans, but, unfortunately, the plane crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The passengers' heroic action saved countless lives and prevented the 4th plane from reaching its intended target, believed to be either the White House or the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. The events of Flight 93 have been immortalized in popular culture and are a testament to the bravery and selflessness of ordinary people in the face of unimaginable danger. Who led the attacks? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was identified as the principal architect of the 9/11 attacks and was later captured in 2003. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was a high-ranking member of Al-Qaeda and had been involved in several other terrorist attacks before the 9/11 attacks. He was responsible for the planning and coordination of the hijackings that took place on that fateful day, which resulted in the deaths of nearly 3,000 people. Mohammed was eventually captured by U.S. forces in Pakistan in 2003 and was later transferred to Guantanamo Bay for interrogation and trial. His capture was a significant victory in the war against terrorism, and his subsequent trial has been closely watched by people around the world. Despite his capture and imprisonment, the impact of the 9/11 attacks continues to be felt to this day, with a lasting legacy of fear, grief, and trauma. The impact on air travel and tourism. The 9/11 attacks led to a significant decline in international tourism, particularly in the United States, as travelers became more cautious about flying. Many airlines and airports were also forced to implement stricter security measures, which led to longer wait times and more complex screening processes. This had a significant impact on the aviation industry, with many airlines struggling to stay afloat in the aftermath of the attacks. Additionally, the attacks had a ripple effect on other industries that rely on tourism, such as hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues. The economic impact of the attacks was felt across the globe, with many countries experiencing a downturn in their economics. Despite these challenges, the resilience of the American people and the efforts of the international community have helped to rebuild and strengthen the affected areas. The USA Patriot Act. In response to the attacks, the United States government enacted the USA Patriot Act, which aimed to strengthen national security and prevent future terrorist attacks. The act gave law enforcement agencies increased powers to investigate suspected terrorists, including the ability to conduct surveillance and detain individuals without trial. While the act was controversial and criticized by some as an infringement on civil liberties, its supporters argued that it was necessary in order to protect American citizens from future attacks. The act has been reauthorized several times since its initial passage and remains a key tool in the fight against terrorism. The formation of the 9/11 Commission. The formation of the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States, also known as the 9/11 Commission, was established to investigate the events leading up to the attacks and released its report in 2004. The report made several recommendations for improving national security, including the creation of a Director of National Intelligence to oversee and coordinate intelligence efforts across the government. This commission also highlighted several failures in the government's response to the attacks, including a lack of communication and coordination between agencies and departments. The report served as a wake-up call for the government and led to significant reforms in the way that national security is organized and maintained. Despite these efforts, however, there have been several high-profile terrorist attacks in the years since 9/11, including attacks in Madrid, London, Paris, and Brussels. The economic impact of 9/11. The attacks had a significant economic impact on the United States, with industries such as aviation, tourism, and insurance suffering considerable losses. In the aftermath of the attacks, air travel came to a virtual standstill as people were afraid to fly. Airlines were forced to lay off thousands of employees, and several major carriers filed for bankruptcy. The insurance industry was also hit hard, with many policies including coverage for acts of terrorism being reassessed or canceled altogether. The attacks had a ripple effect throughout the economy, with many businesses struggling to stay afloat in the wake of decreased consumer spending. In addition, the attacks led to increased government spending on national security, further straining the budget. Despite these challenges, the American economy eventually rebounded, due in part to government stimulus efforts and a renewed sense of national unity. Today, the United States continues to face economic challenges, but the lessons learned from 9/11 have helped to shape policies and strategies for promoting growth and stability. Memorials and tributes. Various memorials and tributes have been established to honor the victims of the 9/11 attacks, including the Tribute in Light in New York City and the Reflecting Absence Memorial at the World Trade Center site. These memorials serve as the reminder of the lost lives and the bravery of those who responded to the attacks. Tribute in Light is an annual art installation that projects two beams of light into the sky to represent the Twin Towers. It has become an iconic symbol of hope and resilience for New Yorkers and people around the world. The Reflecting Absence Memorial features two reflecting pools set within the footprints of the original Twin Towers, surrounded by a grove of trees and inscribed with the names of the victims. The design of the memorial was selected through an international competition that received over 5,000 entries. In addition to these physical memorials, there are also many online tributes and virtual memorials where people can share their thoughts and memories of the events of 9/11. These memorials and tributes help to ensure that the memory of the victims and the lessons learned from 9/11 are never forgotten. We hope you will always take a moment to honor and remember those who were affected by this tragic event. Thank you for joining Liber-Tea today, as we reflect on the events of that fateful day and learn more about the resilience and strength of the American people. Like, share, subscribe, and comment to join the conversation.